Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of my Coraline Halloween nail design. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, that one is up and ready to be viewed, and it would make a lot more sense if you saw that one first, just because I do all of the 3D art in that video, and this video is more of me doing the character art with, shading and painting the other mother and painting Coraline as well. So if you're more interested in the 3D portion of how I achieve some of these looks, go ahead and check that one out first. But if you already saw part 1, then this video picks up right where the last video ends. So I'm just gonna get right to it. What you see me doing here is shading in Coraline's doll for the hair. Now for the hair, I decided to go in with black because it was the only thing that would pop off of the blue hair, just enough to give it some dimension. And one thing I've learned when working on hair is that you want little to no products or amount of products on the brush. And what I mean by that is less is essentially more. In this case, we're building up the product. So I started with black, focusing underneath the neck because that tends to be the darkest area whenever you're looking at a photo or a drawing of a character. And then I also focus the black on the parting of the hairline. Then I go in with some blue just to add some dimension. And then I focus some white gel polish on the part of the hairline as well and on the sides to add a little more dimension as well. Now, because I'm going in with 3 separate colors, like I said, less is more. If I start off with a whole bunch of gel polish and just blob it all on there, I'll end up changing the original blue of the hair from the 3D sculpting gel and end up changing it completely to a different shade. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep the original blue from the 3D sculpting gel as much as possible. So like I mentioned in part 1 of the design, I also wanted to add little snippets of my inspiration pictures. That way you guys can see kind of where I was going with this look. I will say though that one thing I wish I hadn't focused so much on was that in this picture right here, you can tell that there's a lot of it looks like a rag doll, she's almost dirty. And I really took that to heart from the photo, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna shade here and shade there and make her look dark around the edges here. And I totally overdid it, and I wish I wouldn't have. To me, she just ended up looking almost gray, like a charcoal dark gray. And I go in later on to correct that with a nude gel polish, and I don't really shade it after that because I just felt like I was overdoing it and I didn't want to ruin what I was already trying to fix. right here you can kind of see what I meant by her skin being a little too dark, and maybe I did exaggerate just a little bit. She's not charcoal gray, but she is gray, and I really didn't like it. I wanted more of a nude tone. So before I move on to painting the other mother, I do show you the difference when I go in with that nude shade of gel polish. After I finished adding all of the detail to the doll itself, I went ahead and painted the other mother's claws gray, and then I do add some black lines over that. Now, somebody in my last video, well, part 1 of this video, mentioned that she saw someone say you can take a fishing line and dip it in, I think it was gel polish or hard gel, to stiffen up the fishing line and use that as the other mother's claws. And that was such a great idea. I wish I had seen that video she's talking about before I made this design, because that would have looked so cool and like really, really clean. But what I ended up doing instead was I ended up just using Makart's 3D sculpting gel. And right here, this is what I'm talking about. I just went ahead and put new gel polish all over her skin, and I did end up calling it a day for that nail. Then I moved on to the pinky nail. This was what I sketched out on my iPad, and as you can see, the sketch looks a lot different from what I actually was able to achieve, and that's because I do get a little sketch crazy with my iPad, and when I zoom in on my iPad, I'm adding all this detail and I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna look so cool. But realistically, I don't have that much space, so I had to switch things up a bit. Here is another perfect example of me getting carried away. I was gonna add dragonflies and the little, I forget what they're called, cocoa beetles from Zanzibar at the very bottom, but I ran out of space, and I mean, of course I ran out of space. But if you're wondering how I got these little, I call him a snuggle because I don't know what his name is, but it's the character that Coraline has near the shelves on her door. I did this look in part 1, so like I said, if you want to see how I achieved it, go ahead and check out that video. Otherwise, this video, I'm just gonna go back to this nail and start shading everything in. If you guys are wondering what colors and brands I'm using in order to paint the characters, I will put most of those in my Amazon storefront, and the link to that will be in the description, because I do end up using quite a lot of colors, and it just, I mean, there would be a long list of just colors in the description. So I just feel like it would be easier if you guys can just head over to the Amazon storefront, and that way everything will be in one place. Now, out of the entire set, I do think that this one is my favorite just because I love all of the colors on this nail and how it just all came together. But after that, I went ahead and started working on the other mother. This nail is completely gel polish only, and this was the picture that I used for inspiration. But this was another one of those instances where I got a little heavy-handed with the shading, and I wish that I hadn't, and I feel like the character would have come together a lot better had I just been a little bit easier on the shading. But overall, I think she turned out okay. Now, I'll be honest, I really misjudged the inspiration picture that I chose because I figured it was gonna be kind of simple and it really wasn't. And the reason I misjudged it is because her face is at an angle. So not only am I drawing half of her face, but her face is tilted downward, and it made the proportions a little bit crazy to me. Not that it can't be done, of course it could be done, but I'm not used to painting characters from an angle that way. I'm used to painting them like facing forward, head on, and this was a little bit of a challenge for me. Now that I finished the outline, it was time to shade in the other mother, and I started by using a beige shade of gel polish for her skin tone. The cool thing about using a beige shade of gel polish is that you can go over your original sketch and still see the black pop through underneath. It's not really noticeable to the camera, but even if it was, that would be okay because you're going to trace over that exact outline anyways. So you don't really have to worry about being careful about going over what you've already outlined, because it's going to serve as a guide for you later on when you go to trace over those lines in black. After I finished her shirt, I went ahead and started shading things in. I started off with her body, which I was actually really pleased with how I was able to shade in the body. And so I figured I would just use black to shade in her face as well. Unfortunately, I think that's where I could have made a better decision for this design. I wish I could go back and actually shade her in using brown gel polish. I did learn that mistake and correct it right away when it came to the Coraline nail that I do for the index finger. I felt as though the skin tone came out really, really dark for the other mother, and so when I used brown to shade Coraline on the next nail, she looks so much more natural. She definitely has some definition, but like I said, it just looks natural. It's almost like she has some contour on, you know? And that's just a lesson learned from me. Like I said, I'm going to share with you guys all of my mistakes. That way we can learn from them together. And now I know moving forward, whenever I'm doing characters, it's most likely going to be better to shade in a dark brown or even like a medium tone brown, almost like milk chocolate, rather than to shade in black, because black is just so harsh for anything. It's fantastic to outline your characters, but maybe not so much for shading. This is what the other mother was looking like before I went in with the black and started shading her face. You will see right away how dark she gets, and maybe the camera isn't picking it up as like true to what I'm seeing it, because when I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, she's really not that dark. But if you're looking at it in person, she does look darker than what she is on camera, and I guess that's kind of a good thing. But like I said, definitely shade with brown for natural skin tones rather than black. This is the Coraline nail. Now, you guys, I'm really, really sorry, but I have no idea what happened to the first part of this nail where I show you how I sketched out her face, because I know for a fact that I edited it. Don't mind me, you guys. But it was here and it just totally disappeared. So I am so sorry. But I did start off with her face. I moved down into her neck, and then I did a yellow for her jacket. Now I am just working on her hair. So here is the part where I actually do show how I shade her in with brown instead of black. And in the next little clip that I'm about to show, you can see how she's definitely shaded around certain areas, but it just looks so much more natural. So I want to show you guys what I had originally sketched out on my iPad. I was going to put the other mother's hand at the very top with the needle. And then I was going to put welcome home on Coraline's jacket with the candle, the birthday cake underneath, as if to say, like, you know, in the movie, she doesn't really stay with the other mother and she chooses to go back home to her real mom. Well, of course, it's Halloween, so I wanted to do a little spin-off where she actually chooses to stay with the other mother, and I thought that was going to be really cool with a welcome home written on her jacket. But like I said, I definitely ran out of space, so I did not include the claw and I did not include the welcome home. I did, however, include the birthday cake underneath. Here we have the final look, you guys. We've got Coraline's little snuggle animal. We've got the key, Coraline's doll, the other mother, Coraline with her birthday cake. I absolutely love how these came out. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.